Right, hello everyone. Welcome back to my channel. FPL Vincenzo here, and a second podcast from me ahead of the new FPL season. So the first one I released earlier this week was around a little bit of a brain dump on Erling Haaland. Thanks for the feedback on that part I've already received. And this one is going to be more around targeting the first 3 game weeks, what the best strategy is for the first sort of original block of the season, sort of the sort of considerations that I'm thinking about right now, the sort of things that are impacting my decisions. So I'll jump straight into it really at the moment. And that's the base of this podcast. I'm going to keep it on this slide. So I've got at the moment the first 5 weeks of fixtures on the slide, and I've broken them into 2 halves. 10 teams play 3 home games in the first 5 game weeks, and the other 10 teams play 2 home games in the first 5 weeks. And as a start, I think it's helpful here to look at home advantages and everything. But to analyse the fixtures, I think this is a good way to do it. So you look at most teams play at home in 1-3-5. There are a couple of exceptions. Leeds in 2-4-5, Bournemouth in 2-4-5, and Tottenham in 2-4-5. And then clearly against that, most of the away teams play at home in 2-4. Arsenal, Hull and Ipswich being the exceptions in 1-3. So I think when we build out a squad for the start of the season, it's fairly obvious that I think for me, the focus is on the left side here. Whether you're attacking the first 3 game weeks, I think it's nice to have 2 home games in the first 3 game weeks. So those 10 teams, Bournemouth, Brentford, Brighton, Everton, Fulham, Leeds, Man City, Newcastle, Nottingham Forest and Tottenham will play at home in 1 and 3. And then also Arsenal play at home in 1 and 3, as do Hull and Ipswich. If you want to extend it to 5 games, then again, those teams are still good, most of those with 3 home games. What's also worth noting is just because teams are at home doesn't mean to say those home games are easy. You may argue no games are easy in the Premier League, but Brighton, for example, have Arsenal as one of their home games in game week 5. Whereas other teams here, you look at, particularly for me, noteworthy, I think, are Leeds. 3 home games the opposite weeks, 2, 4 and 5, and it's Brentford, Newcastle and Palace, all teams that are likely to finish probably around mid-table. That's not too bad for Leeds. So 3 home games in 5, all against teams probably of a similar ability to themselves. Where, again, is there a team here with beneficial promotion teams? Nottingham Forest have got Coventry in 5, Newcastle have got Hull in game week 5. Everton have got Ipswich in game week 5. So it's teams to target with game week 5 in mind. That might be a reason to wildcard in game week 4, that you can go straight into a load of teams playing at home to promoted teams in 5. And then when you look at the away teams, what do you see here? I immediately jumped to Man United and Sunderland, that in the first block, they've only got 1 home game, but on the opening weekend, they're both playing away to promoted teams. So maybe those fixtures are a little bit better. So I've made my first sort of observation of this season across the first 3 game weeks. There are 10 teams, all with 2 home games in the first 3 weeks, 7 on the left as we look, plus Arsenal, Hull and Ipswich. And of those playing away, Man United and Sunderland stand out because of the game week 1 fixtures. Chelsea, because they have Fulham in game week 1, are quite interesting. That might be an underrated fixture in game week 1. They've got Brighton in game week 2, and the preparation is to get Chelsea in place for game week 4 at home to Hull. Crystal Palace, you could argue the same. The fixtures aren't horrid at the start, and they've got Ipswich at home in game week 4. So players from these sort of teams could be interesting. But this is a general sort of starting point for me. What I'm going to do, I've made a slide here looking at main talking points. I'm going to touch on these one by one, and I'm going to refer back to the fixture list when I'm talking about them. So these are sort of discussion points of the community so far for the start of the season. How would I handle these? What are my sort of thought processes around handling these? So the first one is obviously here, bench boost in game week 1, game week 2 or later. My initial thought is I prefer game week 1. It's a rare opportunity where we basically can use 2 chips in the same game week. We're effectively on wildcard right now. So in game week 1, where if you want to look at it through this lens, you're playing your wild card and your bench boost at the same time. No other opportunity is there to play 2 chips together. That's a start. And I say, looking at this, to attack the first 3 game weeks, 7 teams play at home in game week 1, also at home in game week 3. Brentford, Tottenham and Sunderland in those 2 weeks. That's pretty good. Brighton have got Villa and Leeds, pretty good. Everton, Palace and Man United is fine. Fulham, Chelsea and Palace is fine. Man City, incredibly good. Bournemouth and Coventry. Newcastle, fine with Liverpool and Bournemouth. Forest, fine with Leeds and Tottenham. Then you throw in, on the other side, Arsenal have Coventry and Chelsea. That's pretty good. And then Man United, they might be away, but they've got Hull, Sunderland away with Ipswich. There's enough teams, I think, to target here where we can get quite a decent bench boost in game week 1. And you'll have full info going into game week 1. Clearly, the appeal of the bench boost in game week 2 is that Coventry play Hull. Coventry obviously have a lot of budget players. Hull have a lot of budget players. We can have 4 million defenders, maybe 4.5 million mids in that game, and they'll play. That allows maximum budget into other positions, allows you maybe to have a few more premiums. So I can see that appeal. But again, I look at game week 2, and the most of the teams aren't particularly good in game week 1. Villa, Coventry, Palace, they're okay. Palace and Chelsea are okay in game week 1, but not incredible. Liverpool, probably okay with Newcastle under new management in game week 1. Man United, obviously, very good. Sunderland, very good. But there's a week where things can go wrong. You might get some injuries. Someone might get sent off. All these sorts of things. I think that the lay of the land in terms of who will be on the pitch in game week 1 is easier to anticipate than who will be on the pitch in game week 2. So my preference really is for game week 1. But there are obviously caveats here that can you get a good squad for game week 1 with 15 good players in it with the expense from teams like Brentford, Brighton, Man City, Arsenal, Man United, Sunderland. So I prefer that. If you leave it till later, it's obviously the positive to that is you might have higher team value by then, and higher team value might mean you can get a better squad. But because of what I've just said around affording things, I think it's easier to play the bench boost before the wild card. Reasons are, at the moment, we don't have a 4 million goalkeeper in the game. So the minimum we have to spend to activate a bench boost really is 9 million to 4.5 keepers. And from the analysis that's been done by others and the points from last season, the weakest position now, and I think the best position to have a budget player is a striker. It's really hard for strikers to get 150 points. Dominic Calvert-Lewin didn't manage it last year, despite having quite a good season. There are strikers that are 6-7 million that won't get 150 points, let alone those that are cheaper than that. Defenders, there are plenty that can get 150 points. There'll be 4.5, certainly 5 million defenders that will get 30, 35 starts this year, probably 15 starts of DEFCON, maybe a couple of attacking returns and some BPS. They'll get up near 150 points, those guys. There's enough value. As much as you can get 4 million playing defenders, there's some positive to that. I don't want to fill my squad up with those players and miss out on 4.5 and 5 million defenders that can score 70, 80 points more than the 4 million defenders. And I think that's what we're talking about here. In terms of points, in terms of value and points per million, if you want to look at it like that, I think defenders offer the best value in the game. There's a lot of 5 million, 5.5 million defenders that will do very well. Probably score somewhere between 150 and 180 points. I'd quite like to have 4, maybe 5 of them. Certainly think for this season, 4 at the back is better than 3 at the back. Maybe the first time we've said that for a while. And my feeling is you go into most weeks try to play either 5-4-1, 5-3-2, or 4-4-2. I think the third striker is the worst squad space in the team. Obviously, if you're playing a bench boost, you do need a playing third striker. And for my sort of rough look so far, you're looking at paying 6 million for a semi-decent third striker. There's Igor Jesus at Forest, William Schuler at Newcastle, Brian Brobby at Sunderland, Calvert-Lewin 6 million at Leeds. I think that's the bottom end of a good third striker. So if I'm paying 6 million for a third striker, and ideally I want to be paying 4.5, if I'm paying 4.5 for a second goalkeeper, and I ideally want to be paying 4, I want to be doing that for a shorter period as possible. If I played a bench boost after the wild card, how do I get all those players out? How do I fix the fact I've got a 6 million striker I don't want, a 4.5 million keeper I don't want? To me, you pair the bench boost and the wild card together. You get this bench boost played early on, game week 1, game week 2. Say my preference for game week 1, but others may have different viewpoints. And then you get the first wild card gone early-ish. Game week 4 stands out. Game week 6 stands out as better possibles. That way, you're in the wrong template. You're in the wrong structure for a small block of time over the length of the season. I think that's optimal right now. So I'd be playing the bench boost early and not saving it for later, although I appreciate you could have higher team value later. Wildcard windows, so I just kind of touched on those just then. I think game week 4 is one. Clearly a swing for Chelsea from game week 4, where they start with Hull. Crystal Palace get better. They have Ipswich then. You can move off Man United, who have got Man City and Fulham. You can move off your Sunderland if you want, who have got Arsenal, Man City in 4 and 5. If you're playing game week 4. A couple of teams, Bournemouth, Leeds, Tottenham, go into back-to-back home games. Maybe things start getting a little bit better for Arsenal as well. Game week 6, although we can't see the fixtures on the screen, is just by the international break. So that's obviously a lengthier window to get the wildcard set up. More information around who's travelling where over the international break, things like that. And as I touched on in the Haaland episode I did recently, there's a swing there where maybe there's a block of games where you actually don't want Haaland. You can redistribute his money and then save up some transfers to bring him back 3 or 4 weeks later. So my preference probably at a push right now is to play till game week 6. Hence why I've decided to go up to game week 5 on these slides. Again, you can go longer. If you go later, you'll have more team value again. You'll have more information the later you leave it. Everyone will be back by the World Cup, back from the World Cup. You'll know precisely who the best FCON players are. You know who's nailed in the weaker teams. We'll know definitely who the best 4.5 million defender is. All these sorts of things the later you leave it. But I do think this year there'll be quite a lot of change in prices early on. And can you act on all the information of that? If you're only making one transfer a week, the wildcard obviously allows you to make a lot of transfers all at once. And I think that might be necessary. So touching on that a little bit, using early transfers and price riser plans is my sort of next point. And there's been a change to the game this year in the sense that on the official website, there will be notifications around if someone's likely to go up or down in price and how close they are. For those that were more serious managers in the past and less casual and more on it, shall we say, there was other sites like Live FPL that was very good at projecting price changes. And if you use them well, you could get quite a lot of team value. You would know if your player was going down, you could sell them. Equally, you could know if a player you wanted to buy was going up. That's now going to be available to everyone. Or it was available to everyone last year if you went onto one of these sites. Now it's on the official site. More people will naturally see if one of their players is going down in price or if someone they want to buy is going up in price. I don't think we quite know yet how the casuals will react to that. They may see it and panic and think, I'm not losing that team value, I'm going to buy someone, or they may just ignore it. But I do think this year we'll get even a more active transfer base than normal in these earlier game weeks. We've seen numerous examples before. Antoine Semenyo was a good one in game week 1 last year, maybe unexpectedly got a big haul away to Liverpool. Naturally then was sort of transfer target number 1 going into game week 2, and his price went up a fair amount quite quickly. Again, it's not the end of the world whether you get Antoine Semenyo for 6.5 or 7 or 7.5. But if team value, it does feel like team value is quite stretched this year. I don't particularly want to be paying 0.5 extra for a player that I'm probably going to want long term. So let's hypothetically say here in game week 1, Phil Foden does very well against Bournemouth. There's been some comments that Enzo Maresca sees him as an important part of the squad, one of the pillars of the squad, I think was the word used with Haaland and Gavardio. That's led some people to understandably think that Phil Foden will start game week 1 against Bournemouth and probably start a lot of games this year. At 7 million, if he's doing that, he's incredibly cheap. Quite rightly deserves attention and should be one of the players we're most considering for our teams. So let's say now in game week 1, I'm not quite trusted in Enzo Maresca. I'm not going to own Phil Foden because I'd rather have someone who I'm more sure of their minutes, which I think is fine as well. Phil Foden gets 10 plus points in game week 1. More glowing praise from Enzo Maresca after the game. I don't think it will take very much by game week 2 for Phil Foden to have 2, maybe 3 price rises. If he does well again against Crystal Palace and his Coventry in game week 3, he might have gone up 0.5 by that point. So if that's going to happen and Phil Foden looks like someone I'm going to want in my team for a decent period, I want to be willing to make a move early to get someone like that. So I think it's quite easy at the start to think, I'm going to pick a good team in game week 1. I'm going to keep rolling. I'm going to have 4 free transfers going into my wild card, and I'm not going to make a transfer for the first block. But I do think that's missed opportunity. We're not going to get everything right in game week 1, obviously. But if we get enough price points covered, we can very easily move sideways to more players. That might be one strategy here to try and cover all of the price points, have a 6, a 5.5, a 5, a 4.5, and a 4 million defender. Therefore, if any defender looks like a must-have after game week 1, we've got someone to sell and we can afford them. Same in midfield. Maybe we have Bruno at 12 and Saka at 9.5. And if we have Saka against Coventry, if it doesn't work out and Cole Palmer does really well against Fulham, we can do Saka to Palmer in game week 2 and use a transfer. We have a 7 million mid, maybe a Szoboszlai or someone to start with. We know he's going to play. If Foden does well, we've got Szoboszlai to sell to Foden. These sorts of things. I think it's good to have price points covered, have ideas on the sorts of players who might become a bandwagon in terms of popularity, whether that's by casual managers or more focused managers. But I wouldn't just completely write off the idea of early transfers. There will be a lot of price changes. There will be a lot of activity in the market. I think lots of buying and selling early on. And if you stay out of that and roll your transfers and store up your transfers, there could be gains to that down the line. But equally, if you're going to want the same players that were going up in price in game week 2, 5 or 6 of those players might go up like $1 million between them. And if you're already finding picking a squad quite hard on the budget, waiting 3 weeks and then paying $1 million more for the same squad is probably not optimal strategy. So to me, I think early transfers should be considered. I'm not saying I'll definitely make them, but I'm making a couple of loose plans around it. And be aware of price rises and price falls and be active in terms of that. Because if someone's going up who you want slightly longer term, I would just get it done quickly. I wouldn't hang around, wait 2-3 extra weeks and watch the price carry on going in the direction you don't want it to go. Next question here is where to save budget. So I've said, I think long term, the best place to save budget is on the third striker. I think we'll wait for a Mark Gui type player to emerge. If we wildcard in game week 6, maybe one of these 4.5 million strikers has dropped to 4.3 by then, and that's super good if that happens. Goalkeeper, I think we naturally want a 4 million sub keeper. Finding one who's playing this year might be harder. No Martin Dubravka in the game or Carl Darlow or anyone like that right now. So waiting a bit longer, then maybe someone buys someone who's 4 million or someone gets injured and allows the backup to come into the team. All these things could happen. But I think they're the two sort of non-negotiables for me: 4 million backup keeper and a really cheap striker. I say naturally at the start, I think people will look at like Coventry defenders for 4 million and think I'll bench them in game week 1 and I'll play them in game week 2 against Hull, potentially on the bench boost, or maybe just in my starting 11. And maybe that's fine. They've also got Brighton, you could play them against in 4. Nottingham Forest, you could play them against in 5. I'm not saying over a season, if they play 35 games, one of these Coventry 4 million guys, they'll probably get 100 points. I think that's more than valid. They can average over 3 points a game, particularly if they're semi-decent for DEFCON. But for me, we're obviously in a Premier League season now, and we're looking back over past Premier League seasons where lots of promoted teams have gone straight back down. I know last year was an exception with Sunderland in particular doing well, and Leeds obviously were fairly good as well. But before that, there was 2 straight seasons where the 3 promoted clubs went straight back down. To me, right now, looking at Hull, Ipswich and Coventry, as a 3, I think they're arguably worse than some of those that went down 2 or 3 years ago. I don't have high expectations here. I probably expect all of them could be close to conceding like 80 goals, if not more, over the course of the season. Looking at their current teams, obviously there's time for them to recruit still. They're not going in the transfer market like Sunderland did last year, who spent very well. These 3 teams aren't doing that. So if we're looking at teams here that, although we'll bench them quite a lot, I appreciate that, they're going to concede 3 goals or more than 3 goals. Maybe there'll be the odd spanking in there, 5 or 6 conceded. I don't really want these guys in my team for defenders or goalkeepers. So if you're going to do it purely if you're going to maybe play the wild card in game week 4. You're going to bench boost in game week 2. You're going to play Bobby Thomas in game week 2 on the bench boost and bench him the other 2 weeks. Fine, I'm good with that. But as I said earlier, I think defenders are more valuable than they've been before. Some of these 5.5 million guys are good owns. I don't want to lose the opportunity to own those because I've got a space filled up by a Coventry defender. Where my head is at the moment is, say, loosely towards the bench boost in game week 1. Hull in particular have a couple of 4.5 million midfielders who I expect to start in game week 1. Now, they probably only get 2 points in game week 1, but I'm good with that. I think midfielders are quite hard at the minute. You obviously can't do much damage in midfield. I don't get negative points for conceding goals or things like that. You never know, they might sneak an assist if you're lucky. My mentality for the start is to pick a 4.5 million mid. Play them on the bench boost in game week 1, except that I'm only going to get 2 points from them. But hopefully the other 3 players on the bench pull their weight a bit, and between them they get 10 points. I'd be happy with that right now. And then maybe in game week 4, I'll free up some funds. So here's a hypothetical example I've considered. I'll have a 4.5 million whole midfielder, and I'll have Brian Brobby. Brian Brobby can be bench boosted in game week 1 away to Ipswich. I'll play him at home to Fulham in game week 2. I've got options in game week 3 to sell him, or in game week 4 to sell him. And what I'll do, probably if I waited till game week 4, is Bournemouth run into 2 home games. Krupi Jr.'s got injured. So in game week 4, would I be prepared to use 2 transfers to sell my whole midfielder and Brian Brobby and basically redistribute the funds into a different structure? Marcus Tavernier right now is 6 million, the same price as Brian Brobby, albeit a midfielder. He's then going into 2 home games with Brentford and Liverpool. So I upgrade my whole midfielder to Brobby, and I free up the 1.5 to do that by downgrading Brobby to a 4.5 million forward. I don't hate that plan. I get 1 fixture out of my whole mid. If I need to play him against Coventry in game week 2, I can, but he's fine on the bench. In game week 3, he becomes Tavernier, or in game week 4, he becomes Tavernier. That's loosely a little plan I've looked at. I say there's also plans around starting with Saka, and if we get wind before the game week 1 deadline, he's going to play against Coventry, and giving myself the option of getting to Cole Palmer in game week 2. That's also on radar. So a few strategies early on. But I quite like the idea of the cheap mid to start, because you can't have a cheap striker because of the bench boost. Cheap defenders are a concern to me, and I think there's more weight and power and influence in having better defenders. At the moment, my draft has got all my 5 defenders cost 5 million or more. So by default, almost my budget player becomes the mid, but I'm happy to accept 2 points from on the bench boost in game week 1. After that, I shouldn't need them. So 2 other questions to come here. Safer DEFCON picks versus higher upside. And I think this depends on the position. So again, a couple of examples here. Let's look at the 5 million defenders. We've got Neco Williams as a good example at Nottingham Forest, playing left wing back, most likely under Oliver Glasner. And like from what we've seen in pre-season so far, the most advanced of the 2 wing backs. So this year's version almost of Daniel Munoz, if you want to call it that. Maybe not quite as attacking, maybe not quite as capable, but we'll get forward, we'll play wing back. We'll certainly have touches and involvement around the other team's box. If you get some good variance from that, you might get some attacking returns. He's 5 million. He's got 3 home games in the first 5, Leeds, Tottenham and Coventry. You could pick him. I don't know how many attacking returns you expect Neco Williams to get over a season. Let's hypothetically say he's going to get 4 goals and 4 assists, which seems a reasonable expectation for someone like him. 8 returns over 38 weeks. That's roughly 1 in 5. So we're going to own him for 5 weeks. If he scores the average, he's going to get 1 return across these first 5 weeks. Obviously, work out how many clean sheets you expect Forest to get from these fixtures. He may have some other routes to points as well. But is he going to score more than someone who's going to get DEFCON in every game? So also at 5 million is Vuskovic at Brighton. I just bought him from Tottenham. I think expectation for him is he's a very good DEFCON defender. And most of the DEFCON defenders from last year, Lacroix, Tarkovsky, these sorts of guys have had decent price rises up to 6 million. So to get a 5 million DEFCON guy, you're looking at someone new to the league, or you're looking at someone who's maybe playing in a different system, or someone who's playing under a different manager, realistically. Otherwise, the likelihood is they'll repeat last year's outputs. So Vuskovic is an example of that. He's changed teams to Brighton. he may get an attacking return from a set piece, but I don't think we can expect that. But if he gets DEFCON in 4 of the first 5 games, he's probably going to outscore Neco Williams if he only scores 1. If you've got really high expectations for a defender that you think this person might genuinely get 3 or 4 attacking returns in the first 5 weeks, I don't think we've got anyone sort of what Trent Alexander-Arnold used to be, but some people have been getting excited about Adrian Traffeur. I say Neco Williams nice and high. People might look at Nico O'Reilly and think, well, he's clearly capable. Fine. If you're going to go for one of these guys and you think they're going to get 3 or 4 attacking returns, that's more than enough to outscore the DEFCON. But in general, I don't think defenders can be relied upon for that. So for a defender, I'd be prioritising the DEFCON guys, even if it's only for a short burst of 3 weeks or 5 weeks. Certainly long term, I would certainly rather have them. But even over short term, I would too. In midfield, it's maybe a bit different. So an example here for me is Anton Stack, who's 6 million for Leeds. Nice 3 home games in the first 5. And we'll use Ismail Assar for Crystal Palace, who's 0.5 more expensive. But I think they're comparable here. So Ismail Assar, clearly a high ceiling player. He's got Everton away, Fulham away, Leeds away. He could score in all 3 of those games. He's got Ipswich at home, which is obviously the money fixture for him. It's not even unreasonable he might score against Man City. Not expected, but also not unreasonable to think he could score in the first 5 games. Certainly not unreasonable to think he might score 2, maybe 3 goals in the first 5 games. Anton Stack for Leeds, probably more tempting to bench because he's a DEFCON guy. On some set pieces for Leeds, 3 home games. He also could do quite well, but I think the expectation is his points are going to come from DEFCON. Got it at a reasonable rate last year. I say he may get some assists from some set pieces. He may score a long shot or something. But the ceiling of Sarr is superior to Stach in the same way the ceiling of Williams was superior to Vuskovic. But I think Sarr is more capable than Neco Williams of justifying that ceiling. Sarr could get 3 or 4 goals. I don't think Neco Williams is going to get 2 or 3 attacking returns. So I'm more likely, if I'm going to take a risk on what I'll call an upside pick, I'm more likely to do it in midfield and pick an upside midfielder more than a DEFCON guy. So I know James Garner's injured, so not a good example. But if you're offering me now an Elliot Anderson, a James Garner, an Anton Stach or someone more like that, I'd much rather pick someone at a similar price with the higher ceiling, whether that is Ismail Assar, whether that is, I don't know, Florian Wirtz, whether that is Fernandez at Tottenham. Any of these guys I'd rather own over the DEFCONs, but for the defenders, I'd pick the DEFCONs. I think it's position dependent on what strategy I would go for. And high ownership versus low ownership. So this is quite a pivotal question to making a good start in the game. Certain players here, and I'll club Haaland and Bruno Fernandes together for this. I expect both of them to have higher than 50% ownership in game week 1. Haaland here has clearly 3 captaincy games in the first 5 weeks. Bournemouth, Coventry, Sunderland. Bruno Fernandes in reality is probably only going to be captained in game week 2 against Ipswich. Now you look at game week 2 and think there's not loads of other obvious captains here. So maybe I do want Bruno Fernandes because you look at the rest of the fixtures. Man City are away, Arsenal away. You could captain a Liverpool player at home if you trust them. You could captain a Chelsea player at home if you trust them. But Bruno is clearly the standout right now, I think, at least at home to Ipswich. But some people might think I don't like my squad with both of these two. It's too much money. It's too much sacrifice. I don't need Bruno Fernandes. I can put him down to Bukayo Saka. Save the 2.5 million. That 2.5 million can be 4 or 5 upgrades in my squad. And Saka maybe even capable of matching Bruno across the first couple of weeks. Just a theory here, hypothetical. If you think like that, that's fine. And you're brave to take the risk. If it pays off for you, you're going to get a very good start. Because at 50% ownership or even 60, 70% ownership, if Bruno Fernandes starts slowly in the first 2 weeks, lots of managers are tying up a lot of budget for not many points. You've distributed your budget better. You're probably going to get more points than the Bruno owners have got. You're ahead of all of them at 70% of the game. You could easily be in the top 100k in the first 3 weeks by taking on Bruno and him failing. Equally, if you take him on and Bruno gets 2 double-figure hauls in the first 2 weeks and 70% of the game own him, you're going to be about 7 million overall rank. This comes down to how aggressive you want to be. How much is a strong start important to you? If you want to make a really strong start, you can play the bench boost and the triple captain in the first 2 weeks. Let's say you triple captain, or in the game week 3, maybe you triple captain Haaland against Coventry. in game week 1, you play the bench boost, you're in a good position. You're using the chips to gain extra points. That'll give you a good rank. The other way to gain a good rank is to take educated risks. I'm not going to tell you what the best plan is here. Do you own Bruno Fernandes at 70% ownership, knowing that if he gets good points, you're part of the pack, and you take your risk somewhere else? Maybe you pick a different captain. Maybe some of your squad players are different to the template, and if all of them outscore the template pick by a couple of points, you're up. You've got different ways to play this in terms of taking risks. You completely leave out high-owned players, and that could be massive gains if they underachieve. You pick different captains, and that could be massively higher gain if they underachieve. Or you pick a slightly off template squad and hope that goes well. There's different routes to do this. For me, I'm hoping probably after 3 weeks to be certainly in the top million, maybe around 500k I'd be content with. Certainly if I played the bench boost, I'd probably expect to be in the top 500k. That would be the only chip I'd play in the first 3 weeks, I think, right now. If I can play a bench boost and got offered 500k now at game week 3, I would take it. I'm not one for big risk in this little first block of 4 or 5 weeks. I'm going to own what looks like the high-owned players, if I can. Certainly those with high ceilings, like Bruno, like Haaland. I think it's safe to have them and just know that if they do well, you've got them. Is that worth the risk to not have them? I don't think so. But equally, I will take risk on some fringe players. I don't know what the template in the game is right now, but I won't have... half of my squad will probably be off template for this first 4 weeks, first 5 weeks, because I'll use that as a hope that maybe each of my players can outscore the template by sort of 5 points across the first 3 weeks. If I'm up 20 points on the template by a couple of differentials, that's pretty big early on, and that's my route towards sort of the top 100k. So I think you need to pick your battles is maybe the main point. Taking on the super high ownership players with high upside, I think is dangerous and probably not worth it. If you can find a couple of low ownership gems, maybe you've identified a DEFCON defender that's gone under the radar, that's well and good. Maybe you'll take a punt on Truffaut and bench him in game week 1 against City and then bring him in and he happens to score. We saw numerous examples last year where a centre-back scored 2 goals in the same game. I benched Malik Thiel for one of them. He scored 2 goals in one game for Newcastle. If you get some high variance like that, what would the game be like if people own Bobby Thomas, play him against Hull in game week 2 and he scores 2 goals? Very obviously the variance will be massive on that, but we can't rule out it could happen. So pick your battles, pick your risk. And that's the game. So if I was going to just quickly conclude here with what I think the perfect start would be, I think the perfect start is to try and chase a sort of a top 100k rank through the first 3 game weeks. I wouldn't go mad with the chips, but I think using 1 is not the worst idea in the first 3 weeks. Could be a triple captain in 3, could be a bench boost in 1 or 2. I think that the best plan is to set yourself up is to use the early wildcard to get the bench boost gone in those early weeks and wildcard soon after, whether that's game week 4 or game week 6. I'll probably do a separate pod looking precisely at those 2 weeks to try and work out which is actually better. I'll do that before the start of the season. But for me, I think it probably is one of those 2 weeks, 4 or 6. Be proactive in the transfer market. If someone starts well and you think you want them, get on them early so you're not priced out of them later. I think that's quite a pivotal strategy. Be prepared to shift budget around. I think getting onto a strategy where the third forward is the budget player is sensible, whether that's on wildcard or whether that's with 2 transfers before the wildcard even. And I think take worthy risk at the start. Pick some high upside players, some differentials. Someone like Ismail Assar is a good example. Might not have high ownership. The Crystal Palace fixtures aren't incredible, but is capable of scoring 3-4 goals in 5 weeks. Someone like him could be a really nice differential. And if you're playing quite a short game early on before that first wild card, someone like him could be incredible. He could be this year's Semenyo from last year. And pick your battles in high versus low ownership. Don't go against the crazy high ownership would be my advice. Try and find a couple of low ownership players where if they do go mad, you're basically getting all the points to yourself. That's really big if you can solve them. Maybe take on some of the sort of 10% owned players with 1 or 2% owned players. That's it for this pod. So thanks for listening. Hopefully this one hasn't gone on too long. So yeah, loosely, my plan is at the moment to bench boost 1, wildcard 4 or 6, take some risk early on. I'll do a couple more pods before the season starts. I'm going on holiday, so maybe I'll get another one out before I go. But if I go missing for a week, it's because I've gone on holiday. But I'll definitely get 2 or 3 more pods out before Coventry kick the season off against Arsenal. If you've got any more topics you want me to discuss, feel free to leave it in the comments. I'd appreciate a subscribe if you can. And I'll speak to you all soon. Thanks very much and see you later. I will do this.